Hello. I am finally making my ENTP video. Well, starting on it today anyway. I don't think I'll be able to finish it, but I've been meaning to make it forever and ever and ever. And just one thing after another just keep coming up. And actually, I was about to make it about 2 weeks ago, and then I found out I was going to be around ENTP, so I was like, well, that would be really dumb to make a video right before I get to study an ENTP some more. So about the only conscious thing that I got out of that, I know that there's some other stuff that I noticed underneath somewhere, but is that I have an ENTP relative, and this individual and my ENTP relative, I mean, they're both kind of in the same demographic, at least superficially, I would think. Both like a style of music and dance that goes with it that is in this country that's kind of obscure. So kind of funny. I mean, it's not a big enough sample to make any big conclusions about, but it sure made a big impression on me. So let me just qualify some things before I begin. And one is that I am using Socionics on this, not MBTI. I think it's been translated to MBTI somehow. I haven't looked at the Socionics, the original. I've just looked at a station called Type Tips, and I'm probably getting a lot wrong, even from that. But as it ends up being, the Socionics and the MBTI both have the same functions, and they're both listed in the same order, but MBTI is saying that those functions are listed in order of strength, and according to them, the last four don't even show. And if I was still using that, which I did start out using that, and I wouldn't still be into doing the different types and stuff now, because I mean, no system entirely explains anything, but that was only giving me about half as much of prediction as I could hope from such a system. So I wouldn't have seen it as worth my while, and I still wouldn't be doing it. But doing it from a Socionics point of view, saying that those functions are listed in order of preference, this matches my observations, what I've seen and everything. So also on the Socionics site, they have a relationships chart that I frequently consult. It's very interesting. I think that maybe it's supposed to be, most people see it maybe as like a romantic aid or something, which I don't really see how that would work, because I think they're going from the standpoint that there's the easiest interaction is the best one, which, I mean, I think everybody's path is different, and maybe a relationship that's really easy is not what you need to become what you need to be, you know, and who's going to say something like that? You don't know. But I consulted with all the different types, and in between all the different types and everything, and every kind of interaction, and it's very interesting. It really helps you understand what's going on. And but the important thing to remember, if you do look at that, is that you have to change the MBTI name of a type if it's introverted from P to J and from J to P. So keeping that in mind, I think that the Socionics interactions are based on, you know, INFJ, for example, and ENTP are the cognitive functions. They're called personality, but I think personality is about who you are individually, not about I think this is more like a cognitive operating system. It's more like your interface. And then there's also the emotional operating system, and mine is not typical. And so I think that they're basing their Socionics interactions on someone being a typical Enneagram. That's my opinion. Because what they say about INFJs and ENTPs, it is true, it's very true, but then on the other hand, I see some other stuff happening, and of course, you know, you have so many other variables and stuff too, but like I have a lot more in common with ENTPs than I think that INFJs typically do, just because 7s have any like characteristics, and that is what ENTPs are known for. something kind of have to, the witty thing and the puns and that sort of thing. And when I post something, for example, or I do something that is meant to be help, I would say the Infjs get the cognitive side of it, and I would say the ENTPs get like the humor side of it. Not the humor side of it, but like the 7 side of it, but that includes my humor. Because, well, I read that most comedians are 7-winged 6s or 6-winged 7s, so I'm a 7-winged 6, so they get that side of it because, and we'll go into why, it's because of their SE. It's just the 8th function, and they put that out there to help, but also to buffer. And that is the sense that I'm using my SE in when I do these things, but you know, mine is like almost not there, or like way over the top. But they understand that, and they get the coordinates that I put together and stuff in that sense of it, so it's pretty funny. And when I'm doing something new or something that, yeah, they just kind of, they get it, and they have been pretty supportive of me, actually. According to Socionics, we have a lazy relationship, and I have seen that. Usually it's them that show up again and contact me. And we do find, you know, everything that the other one says interesting. And I think that is the gist of what I remember about the relationship between the INFJ and the ENTP. The lazy relationship thing is that you, and every type has this with some other type, is that you feel like any effort that you're putting towards the other person is too much, like you're forcing something, you're trying to force something, which is really funny to see how it works out with an INFJ and an ENTP when that one falls on us, because we're both kind of so obsessed with authenticity. So it's pretty funny, pretty interesting. I kind of view ENTPs as kind of a cross between ESTP and ENFP, which are 2 types that I had in my family growing up. So that's kind of, I think, how I end up dealing with them. So I don't know any ENTPs really well, but I have spent a fair amount of time with ENTPs, if that makes sense. So looking at their functions. Their very first function, and again, we're doing this in order of preference. It is actually like probably their strongest, or one of their strongest functions. It's their favorite function. It is NE, and they're known for it, along with the ENFPs. NE has to do with options. It's kind of like, it starts out with one thing like this, and then just keeps branching out and branching out, you know. Doing it in a very simplified form, what's going on in their brain would be things like, we'll have to think of a dog, then maybe they'll think of all animals, and from there they'll go for a horse, and then from there to cars, because they have horsepower. I mean, there are all these different associations that it's just going to go everywhere. And so they can seem kind of random. They're great at brainstorming, and they're great at coming up with options and with seeing things from different perspectives. They're extremely creative. So it means NE is for extroverted intuition. So, and they are very good at, like, you know, if you're observing people, they'll especially like hone in on how people speak or how they move, or if they're looking at something and be like, oh, well, that reminds me of this thing. And they're very good at noticing like tangible characteristics of things, and patterns, and connecting the dots and making sense of them. So I did hear on an ENTP video by an ENTP that wasn't a spring chicken, that was giving advice to younger ENTPs, and she was saying, you know, because of these options and everything, it's very difficult for them to settle down on one occupation, or it can be. And so her advice was, find some job that you don't hate, and then when you do figure out what it is that you want to do, you'll have the resources, you know, to be able to do it. So I just want to mention that. It sounded like a good piece of advice to me. I would say that there's a thing about like your ENTPs are very proud of their ability with people, and I've heard one say, "Oh, we're better, dealing with people than INFJs are." Possibly, in some ways they are better at dealing with people. The actual, well, kind of. It's kind of hard to explain this, but I'll try to explain it, how it is that I see it. The more that they live, the more patterns they'll have seen, and the bigger chance there is that they've seen the pattern that corresponds to what is actually happening. If they are stuck in a new culture where things mean something different, they're going to be at a big disadvantage to begin with. And INFJ is probably going to be better because they're tuning into what's going on under the surface. And they're not depending on those visual cues. We have that in our background, and we are using it. The dog always has to do something while I'm recording. Always. Are you coming down or not? Come on. Come. No. All right. So, as I see it, and they always have the NI in the background, which is introverted intuition, which is seeing under the surface. As I see it, they're like an amazing hybrid because they have an extraordinary amount of people skills, and they also have an extraordinary amount of system skills simultaneously. But I think that people are more about feelings than they are about thinking. As far as like the individual type, they'll, as far as what you trust, if you have a T in the name of your thing, it doesn't mean that you don't have feelings, or you're not good at dealing with feelings necessarily. It just means that you trust thoughts more. Of course, all of this depends on the type, right? But if it's T, you trust thinking more or thoughts more, and if you are an F, you trust feelings more. I like to say that the thinkers are emotional about their thoughts, and the feelers are thoughtful about their feelings. And it really is true. It's pretty funny. But anyway, INFJs, we have our sixth function, and we haven't gotten to the sixth function yet, but ours is one that deals with the values, and also it's a huge indexing system for feelings. We have like an incredible variety of shades and nuances and everything because we have access to that FI, whereas that's almost inaccessible entirely to an ENTP, the way that their brain is set up. So, we have an incredible depth, and we have the ability to like actually even feel how it is to be somebody else to that point. And like when we look at people, we can see their entire brain, their conscious, their subconscious, their unconscious, their superego. Like when we look at people, like we're not like kind of almost not focused on their eyes. Like there's this famous INFJ stare because we're actually like looking at people's brains. So I think that ENTPs, a lot of times you only have to deal with stuff on the surface, and that's all you need. And they are really, really good at doing that. And they and ESTPs are extroverted. They get around. They have so much experience with people. All the different people they come across, it's just like the pure volume of it adds up to some really impressive knowledge on their part. And as far as actually knowing what to do in a specific situation, of course they have the TE that we almost don't have. It's amazing, but I think if a lot of pressure starts getting put on society, or somebody's in a different kind of situation that an ENTP is accustomed to seeing them in, you could have some really, what are going to seem to an ENTP is really bizarre behaviors come up, whereas an INFJ is not really going to be all that surprised because we know what's underneath there, even if it's not showing all the time. And so, you have some kind of extenuating circumstance and we're just like, oh yeah, well, I knew that was there. And yeah, well, I can explain that pretty well. But as far as like actually dealing with it and dealing with it quickly, maybe the ENTP is going to be better. But that, I feel like, as far as understanding people more, the INFJ understands people more deeply than an ENTP does. But anyway, be that as it may. I have heard from an ENFP, and this is just something interesting, I guess, maybe in history or maybe just in this country right now, I'm not sure. But no, I don't think it's just in this country, because I was talking to somebody from another country, and that's how it came up. So anyway, it probably has to do with TV, that people just have this tendency to copy other people, and they're copying people on TV, and so a lot of times people are really seeking to not stand out. And I don't know, it seems like it's more at this time in history than maybe other times, or maybe it goes through waves, I don't know. But people won't show very unique characteristics like on the surface. And so like, it's like you're watching TV and they'll put stuff in there, but it's just really dumb stuff, like every time after they say thank you they sniff or something. You know, I'm exaggerating, but it's just like really dumb stuff that they put on there to like give the character texture or whatever, you know. But like I was talking to an ENFP that gets bored about being around people now, because there's nothing unique about it. People are not letting out their uniqueness anymore, and so he like ends up just watching the TV, because you know their NE has nothing to observe, you know. I mean, it's something to think about. It's interesting, because I think everybody is unique in their own way, but like it's just really, most people are not really letting it out. And that's something that I think that ENTPs and ENFPs are especially hard hit by. That's why I am mentioning it. Also, I was watching people like at an airport, and you can tell the difference between NI and NE people. And this is not strictly a thing of, I mean, this is talking about strengths, which I told you these are listed in order of preference. So, for example, like this would show up as NE and an ENTJ, for example, because they have that for their sixth function, and it's a really strong function. But the NI people, their clothes are more of an extension of them, and have more of a flow, kind of. There's a flow between them and their clothes are kind of more of a flow. Whereas the people who have NE stronger, they're very conscious of the clothing and the texture, and it's just like almost seems like it's an irritation to them, like they're just like always conscious of it. It's interesting, and there's not so much flow between the different elements of the clothing, and between them and their clothing is really interesting. It's not, they have their own, it's their own, the two types have two different ways that they go about style, and they both can be equally stylistic. You know, the NE people usually are with SI, and that combines also with that. But like you see INTPs, and again, I'm talking about strength that's interesting. Well, anyway, a lot of INTPs can show a lot of flow in their clothing, just because they have that NI, you know, that is their sixth function, for example. So it's really interesting, that sort of thing, how you can pick out just by watching people, that sort of thing. Also the people that have NE pretty strong, and this could even include like ESTJs, they change subjects very quickly, and their mind is just really going quickly, and they talk quickly a lot of times. Well, it just kind of depends kind of on the culture, but their mind is always going really fast, and they'll change subjects really fast. If you're talking to somebody that has an E pretty strong, and they're like on some subject that you maybe don't want to talk about, that's the thing to do, just bring up something else. Oh, they'll get distracted pretty easily and go on to something else. Let's see. Let's go on to also there's another thing And this is just, I'm not sure if this is really, this is connected with TI, so we're getting to that now. All right, so their second subject, their second most favorite function is TI. TI has to do with, it's the big picture. It's about universal truths. TE, which is extroverted thinking, has to do with situational logic and situational truths. Also, it's kind of a just do it, just feel it function. It's not feel it, I'm sorry, just do it or just say it function. And it also has to do with sequence, including with people. Like it's also into status or observing status. I'm not trying to imply that it's prideful, because I mean everybody can be prideful, whatever functions you have. But they are very conscious of status, and there's a way to use it for good and bad, so I'm not saying one way or the other. I personally do not like TE. Why? Because, you know, not but like, you know, my cognitive functions, because I almost don't have it. It's like, it's my least favorite function. Well, almost my least favorite function. SI is actually my least favorite, but it's my weakest function, say it that way. And it's my second to last least favorite function, so. But anyway, yes, people, as I said, well, let's go back to TI. They like TI, but again, okay, we just talked about NE. That's their first function. So when they're using NE, then they are suppressing number 5, which is NI. Okay, when they're using TI, they're suppressing TE, which is number 6. So when they're using 1, it's suppressing 5. When they're using 2, it's suppressing 6. So I think you see a pattern, and it goes on down the road like that. So they always do have the one that's below is always in the background, right? But of course it's not shining. They're kind of suppressing it when they're using the one on top that they like better. Actually, as it turns out, the TE, their 6th function, is really strong. They don't like it. But your 6th function is your hidden strength, and very possibly your entire cognitive operating system is based upon it. And according to my observations, I do think it's true. So they are very good at acting. They're very good at speaking. They're, you know, the people at TE, you want them there when you need a toast made or a speech made or whatever. They can make it sound official, not say anything, and just fill the amount of space that is appropriate for that occasion. And which is something that I do not naturally do. I had a funny thing happen, because they and the ESTPs have this for their 6th function, and so they're very good at talking. Boy, they will start and not stop. They will just go on, and it's very different than TI speaking. TI speaking is condensed and concise. You took a whole lot of things, you thought about it, you pruned it, you know, did all kinds of stuff to it and got it all ready, and then you said it. Okay? Whereas TE is just saying it right then. There's no planning involved in TE. I mean, there's not one that's better than the other. Sometimes you need to speak, and you just need to speak. And if you can't get it out, I mean, it's hard for me to get stuff out a lot of times, you know, what I'm thinking, or just, and TE, because it's sequenced, they're able to express it in a way that most people can understand very easily, because it goes in a natural sequence, the way that most people's brains are working in a natural sequence. And not an INFJ or ISFJ, because we almost don't have TE, but it gets most people. But I was practicing language with ENTP, and supposedly we're both supposed to be practicing, and I literally had to interrupt him to get anything in, you know, worded and edgewise, and we got to like 45 minutes, and he almost like reproached me or something, like, it's so long, how could you keep me going this? And it's like, I'm thinking, dude, you're the one that was doing all the talking. Like, I barely said anything. Like, what are you irritated about, you know? But, it's kind of funny, but, it's kind of, for people that have more TI, it can be a little hard to concentrate, you know, when somebody with TE heavy is talking, just because you're like, well, you could have said that in one sentence, and they took a whole paragraph to say it, and you're like trying to get the main points out of it, and, it's kind of a little, it's just a different function, but, yeah. So, getting back to TI, which is the one that they actually prefer, the way it works is it's just like this huge, it's a universal truth, right? So if you accept a new fact into the system, it has to collaborate every other thing that you already have in that system. If something doesn't go together with something, if it doesn't go together with something else in that system, then you can't accept it in there. If you bring a new truth in that you know is true, it's a lot of work, because then you have to go tweaking everything. Some things you don't have to tweak, but then you have to tweak everything that doesn't agree with it, but you're basing on it because you did find out that it really was true. Everything that didn't agree with it, that you thought was different, that's in that system, you have to go and tweak every single thing in the entire system. I remember, being TI, I think it kind of maybe affected the way I played when I was little, and I remember that I was just kind of fascinated, like we had little people and stuff, and so that was just kind of fun for me that, okay, move this person along, and then move this person after them, and move that person after them, and then once you got everybody moved, then you went and started it again at the beginning, and that's kind of how it is with TI. Once you bring something new, like everything has to make sense, and it has to interact equally well with every other thing that is already in the system, or like make sense with every other thing that's already in the system. And it's very analytical, and it's very well, I just say this: introverts bring depth, extroverts bring breadth, we would say, or width, right? So together we make 3D. But that happens on a more micro level also, and that's because every type has both introverted and extroverted functions. So if you're an extrovert, your first function is extroverted, and then you have an introverted, and then an introverted. Like they kind of go every other. If you're an introvert, then your very first function is introverted, and then you have extroverted, introverted. So TI is basically a function that goes deep, whereas TE is a function that goes wide. So I don't know if that makes sense. People with TI can sometimes be known as lazy, and this is because they're examining the whole system and trying to understand the whole picture, and then they'll see the most efficient way to be able to do it from there. If you want to think about TE, if you wanted to give it a negative cast, you could think of bureaucracy, and that's kind of how it is, because you have all these different situational pockets everywhere, which TI would be one whole thing where everything is connected to it, and you don't have repetition. You know what I'm saying? It's just like it's one universal system rather than a lot of little systems that are put together. And they both have their advantages and disadvantages. If you have one really big system that really does all work together and you have no repetition, say it is threatened, and it's going to be pretty easy. It's going to be a lot easier in some ways to take down a system like that, rather than if you have individual pockets and repetition and stuff, then it wouldn't be entirely wiped out. People would have to go and get each little outpost, you know what I'm saying? So there's advantages and disadvantages to both of them. But and I'll always talk about status. We mentioned that before. TE has to do with that. Here we're going back again to TE, because that is in the background in TI. Well, I don't usually do it like this, but this is how I wrote down the notes. So anyway, yeah, TI is just like meticulously organized in there, and it's just copious amounts of information, and they're all filed away in a way that makes sense with all the other pieces of information that are in there. And it's a very intricate system, and that's why I was mentioning the depth and the breadth, because the TI is a very deep, it goes deep, whereas the TE goes wide, which I just said, didn't I? Okay, since we are talking about the TE, it already went there. They and the ESTPs are extremely sensitive to status. Because it's not their preferred function, they will make fun of it and joke and everything about it a lot, but it is very much what they're about in the world they're in, because they're very sensitive to all of these types of systems. Sometimes they'll just like specifically go against it just to show how unaffected they are by it or whatever. But I mean, it takes a lot of understanding of the system to be able to go against it like that. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so we are going to go on now to the third function, which is FE. This is something that I feel like a lot of INFJs feel in my having read about interactions between them. I don't feel like it's something that I have really had to struggle with or deal with a lot. Just maybe because my dad's ESTP, so he has it in the same spot, and so maybe I'm just like used to it. But anyway, they just have a particular blend of, like, they have FE. Their FE is the most pure because they almost don't have the FI in the background. That is their weak function. So it's the most pure. It goes wide. It's not about depth of feeling, because their FI is almost not accessible to them, cognitively speaking. I mean, like, I've been around my dad who has these functions in the same spot, and you know, you can tell, like, maybe he got his feelings hurt or something. He doesn't even know what happened, and I can say something and then I can see that he felt better. He just never even knew that anything happened cognitively because they are just not really able to access that. But they do pick up on other people's feelings, but because they don't, it's the most pure FE. It's the most pure FE, and FE is not about depth. Yeah, they are very aware of what other people are feeling, and it's not, your second function is the one that you're able to use the most, and their second function is TI. So, you know, you're talking with them, they'll be talking about systems, you know, and facts and stuff a lot of times. The FE, they put it out there. It does not matter to them as much as it does to an INFJ. They, like I said, you know, they have been supportive of me in some different things sometimes, and it helps me because they have a thicker skin emotionally than INFJ naturally does, so, like, they don't really take stuff to heart so easily. On the other hand, because they almost don't have that they almost can't access that FI, they're kind of a lot more vulnerable in a way than an INFJ is. And I've seen this also with ESTPs, just because they really don't have a whole lot of idea of what's going on in there with, like, the personal beliefs and the personal feelings. I mean, if they want to become a little bit better at it, maybe they might try what I did, because, you know, my FI is number 6, theirs is number 7, so in order of preference, theirs is only one further along, even though for them it's the weakest function. For me, it's like one of my strongest. But I mean, you might try keeping a little bit of a journal or something, just so that you can maybe try to concentrate and get in touch a little bit with what your personal feelings and beliefs are. Because when you have FE, you know, from experience, it's kind of hard to tune into it, and since yours is so weak, I mean, it wouldn't help to, it's never going to be a great function for you, but it wouldn't help. And it gives a lot of advantages, which I haven't thought through, but I've seen with my own cognitive system that I have, and with a few others. I haven't thought it through in all of them, but I can see that it definitely does give some advantages, a lot of advantages, some significant advantages also. One thing with this is it does make it extremely difficult for them to trust people. I think it seems like, I mean, they're pretty tough on the outside, but then there's just really, they can be really fragile on the inside at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. And it's something really interesting with the ENTP I was just thinking about the other day. I was thinking about making this video, that they seem really non-conventional, and they really try to emphasize this side of themselves. But you do run into some things that are more conventional with them, and that is because of the TE. Because TE, and this is not something they're consciously, you know, owning, but TE has to do with, you know, things are done in a certain order, you know, are done in a certain way, and that could overlap, my idea of it could overlap with SI, which sometimes for them, which we're about to come to, that's the fourth function. Your fourth function is like almost not there, or it's over the top. Like it's hard to control your fourth function. Now, it could be you've grown up with someone that has that stronger and you've learned to be able to handle it better, but I'm just saying, you know, to begin with anyway, it's pretty hard for you to regulate your fourth function, and SI has to do with tradition. So it's really funny because they seem really creative and really random and really like unconventional. I said non-conventional, and it's unconventional. But in another way, in some ways, I find them unexpectedly kind of rigid in a way, which is not a bad thing or a good thing, but it's just kind of like, it's kind of funny because they give this certain impression, but then I run into something that I would assume it would mean in this way, but they're not. And it's probably just comparing it to how my system works, and I would expect, well, if you're not conventional, then it would be this, you know. Yeah, and I mean, you look at the INFJ, and we almost don't have TE. Well, it's almost not accessible to us, cognitively speaking. And the SI is our least favorite function, and we're only okay at it. So, yeah, I guess from our standpoint, they can kind of be a little bit stick in the mud compared to us in some ways, which you wouldn't think, you know. And it's not the reputation that either of us have, but that's what I feel like. But again, qualify that all these things have, you know, advantages and disadvantages, and that's just like my cognitively what I'm thinking, not necessarily what I personally like believe or anything. I know they all have purposes. So, and I'm really glad that other people have these functions that I don't like stronger, so that they can do that stuff and I don't have to. So, going on to SI, that's their fourth function. SI is introverted sensing, and it has to do with memory, with details, with tradition. And I saw a video about ENTPs, and I have seen it happen also, that they either have a really good memory about something, like they remember something really well, or they can totally forget something. And when they do, it can be really big things. This video I saw online said that an ENTP that they know lost their laptop. The ENTP relative that we have, he lost something pretty big. I was in a shoe repair shop that an ENTP was working in, and this was an ENTP from a totally different culture even, you know, like this stuff goes across the board, you know, and he fixed somebody's leather pants, and so everything was in, you know, like plastic grocery bags that you couldn't see through on the shelves, and you know, he was so focused on he just kept going on a loop, because there's the NE that would kick in, like, well, is it there or is it there? And he was just sitting there thinking, you know, and then he would switch into the FE mode, and he could feel everybody in line after this lady was irritated, and so he'd start like saying some, you know, pejorative things about himself, and then he would do something else, and he just kept going over and over, and I'm like, and this is the thing with ENTPs, you know, they've got that TI really strong, the TE really strong. If he had just sprung into motion and started looking, you know, feeling all the bags in that amount of time that he took, it's probably 10 or 15 minutes, he could have eliminated a lot of those possibilities, you know what I'm saying? But I've seen that too, like with my mom, she has NE pretty strong, and I mean, she's standing in front of the fridge just like, well, did I put that in there? Or did I not put that in there? Well, did I put that in there? Or did I not put that in there? And like, she's going back and forth, and I'm thinking, freezer is right in front of you. Open it up and look, you know. But they just get stuck on this NE, and so he could have gotten through all those bags. I mean, it wasn't that many, you know what I'm saying? He could have, because it would have felt different than shoes, you know what I'm saying? I almost, you know, I feel responsible for other stuff. I was like, well, maybe I should have stepped in and like helped him out with it. My gosh, you know. But I mean, anyway, and that is another thing too, that this guy from another country was telling me this ENTP. There's two different ones, by the way, in case you know, actually three, from 3 different countries. But anyway, this guy was saying that he's lazy. He's just so lazy. I think that people that procrastinate, they just have a higher stimulation threshold for something, and so it just has to get to a certain point before it actually stimulates them, because they're just like so extroverted. But also, you know, like they're trying to study the whole situation and everything, and I think that takes quite a bit of time and stuff, because they're trying to use their TI instead of their TE. And so I'd just say, like, hey, just while you're thinking about the whole thing and studying it, just start doing it. And by the time you get it figured out and stuff, it'll be done. You know what I mean? Just like do it. Just do it. And they apparently, because I was looking it up for this guy and stuff, and they can apparently get like really, really bored doing mundane tasks, and you know, so it's listening to podcasts and stuff like that, so you can be learning something while you're doing it. I mean, I get really bored with this stuff. I mean, cleaning and stuff is just really boring. Doing stretches, I mean, I have stretches I want to do, but it's just so boring, and I'm like doing the same thing over and over. It's like, oh my gosh. And I could put something on, you know, being an introvert, I don't always have the, you know, maybe I've already been overstimulated or something, and so I can't really take in more stuff. I'm still trying to process what's in there to go deep, you know what I'm saying? And so I don't always have that option, but I guess an ENTP could probably do that.